Okay, welcome everybody. Hope Shavuos was wonderful. And we are learning the Maimon of Baha'aleischa Sanderis, which is a Maimon that the Rebbe said in Shamas Pashas Baha'aleischa Tavshin Chof Tes, and had it published in honor of Tesvav Sivan in Tavshin Nun Aleph. Tesvav Sivan being the day that the Frierdiker Rebbe was imprisoned. Like we mentioned in the beginning of the previous year, that the Rebbe is taking over, even the days that seem to be completely negative. It's not the day of the redemption of the Frierdiker Rebbe. It's the day when the Frierdiker Rebbe was imprisoned. The Rebbe is commemorating this day and honoring the day by publishing a Maimer for it. So we're going to do a little chazara on what we learned in the first year, because it was 3 weeks ago, I believe, was the first year, or 2 weeks ago. So we learned two related ideas. Two related ideas in this Maimer. The first idea is Baha'aleischa Saneris. It says in the pasuk Baha'aleischa Saneris that when Aaron HaKohen kindles the candles, lights the candles, and it's explained that the candles are the neshamis of the Yidden. And the neshamis of the Yidden need to be lifted upwards. Baha'aleischa. The neshamis of the Yidden need to be lifted upwards. And he explains why do the neshamis need to be lifted upwards? What does this mean? So he explains that the neshama, by its nature, wants to be one and included with Hashem. It doesn't want to be drawn down here to the physical world. However, what happens to the neshamas of Biyah, which those are the neshamas of most of us that are living in these days, even in the previous generation, even in the early generations, most of the neshamas were neshamas of Biyah. And certainly in our times, the vast majority of neshamas, nearly all of them, are neshamas of Biyah. So what happens to a neshama of Biyah when it comes down into this world? The way the Eibishter did it, the neshama doesn't give life to the body remotely. In other words, it doesn't stand from afar and throw its energy to the body. That's not the way it works. The way it works is that the neshama is nislavish in the guf. The neshama encloses itself in the body. In other words, it's drawn down and it becomes connected and attached to all of the experiences of the body. What the body sees, what the body feels, what the body perceives, what the body is interested in, they all affect the neshama. I think there's a marshal given to explain it. It's just like, for example, when a person, even his toenail, if a person's toenail is chas v'shalom burnt, the head feels the pain, and the head screams, ouch, even from the toenail. What is it in the head? In other words, it's the neshama. The neshama feels the pain of the body. And so too the neshama feels the perception of the body. And what's the perception of the body? The perception of the body is elam hazeh, is gashmius, is chumrius. You open your eyes, the physical eyes of the body, you don't see godliness. And the neshama is affected by this. At least the part of the neshama that's enclosed in the body. And since the neshama is affected by this, so the neshama no longer maintains its nature of wanting to ascend, wanting to become included and absorbed in the Ein Sof. So therefore you have this idea of Baha'aleischa Saneris, that you need to awaken and renew this nature of the neshama, that it shouldn't want to be drawn to the physical things, that it should be drawn to what's above it. It should be drawn to the godliness and to the spirituality of the higher worlds, and not to the materialism and physicality and taivas of this world. This nature and the neshama needs to be reawakened. And that's Aaron HaKohen's job, that you have to pick up, you have to lift up the neres, you have to bring about in them this nature that they should want to go up. Why dafka Aaron HaKohen? Why is it Aaron HaKohen who does this? Because Aaron HaKohen is the inyan of Torah, like we learned in detail in last year. Aaron HaKohen is the inyan of Torah, and Torah has in it the quality that it's Torah Eid, it's a Torah of light. So the neshama finds itself in the darkness of the body. It's because of the darkness of the body that it loses, or it doesn't lose, but its nature to go up is hidden and becomes inactive. The light of the Torah brings light to the neshama, and now the neshama wants to go up and wants to be included in what's above it and not be drawn down to the grubkite that's below it. That's the first concept that we learned in last year. Okay? In short, you have the ner, you have the neshama. The neshama is down here in the body, and it's drawn after the perception of the body. It needs to be lifted up. It needs to be given back its own nature of wanting to go and attach itself to what's above it, to the spiritual worlds that are above it. And that happens through Torah, through the light of Torah. The second idea that we discussed, and a related idea that we discussed in the first year, is the Medrash that says that Amar HaKadosh Baruch Hu Adam, the Eibishter tells a person, Neiri biyadcha, my candle is being held in your hands. In other words, my candle was entrusted to you. The Nercha biyadi, and your candle was entrusted to me. What's Neiri biyadcha? What's the Eibishter's candle that's entrusted in the person's hands? That's the Torah. The Eibishter entrusts the Torah in the person's hands. What's Nercha biyadi? What's your candle that's entrusted in the Eibishter's hands? That's the neshama. The neshama is entrusted in the Eibishter's hands to keep it safe, to safeguard it. And the Eibishter says, if you will keep my candle, if you will keep the candle of Torah, then I will keep your candle, I will keep your neshama safe and whole. However, in kibisa snedi, if you extinguish my light, my candle of Torah, then I'll extinguish your candle. In other words, that not good things will happen to the person. So that's the second concept that we learned last week. And here again, the Rebbe connects the two. It's the Rebbe Maharash who connects the two. The Rebbe Maharash on the Maimer, Ba'alais Chasaneris, in order to explain Ba'alais Chasaneris, the Rebbe Maharash brings this second idea of Neiri biyadcha v'nercha biyadi. And the Rebbe says that the connection between the two is based on what we explained before. That what did we say is Neiri biyadcha, the Eibishter's candle is in your hands, is what? Is the Torah. And what's Nercha biyadi is the neshama. And in order to keep the neshama safe, the Eibishter says you must keep the Torah safe. In other words, it's the Torah that preserves the neshama. And this is similar to the idea of Baha'aleis Ches HaNeiris, that through Aaron HaKohen's Aveda of lighting the menorah, so the neshama, the neiris go up. They have a Baha'aleis Ches. It's through the Torah of Aaron HaKohen that the neshamas are preserved. Their nature of wanting to go up into the spiritual worlds is preserved. Okay, so there are two related ideas. However, the Rebbe Maharash himself doesn't make this connection. This connection was made by the Rebbe. The Rebbe Maharash gives a different explanation in Nercha biyadi and Neiri biyadcha. So we'll continue now inside Eis Gimel. Umamshich b'hamaymer. The Rebbe Maharash continues in his Maimer. The Tzarech Lahavin, the Rebbe Maharash asks, Be'im shamata sneri ani meshamer es nercha, in this Maimer Chazal, that if you will guard my candle, I will guard your candle. What's the connection between guarding the candle of Torah and the preservation of the candle of the neshama? And not only that they're connected to one another, but they're completely dependent on each other. The only way that you can preserve the candle of the neshama is by keeping the candle of Torah. What's the connection? Why is it that way? The Rebbe Maharash explains it as follows. It says in the Medrash that it says in 3 psukim, it says Eile. It says the word Eile. And the Medrash says as follows: in whose merit were Eile Teldus Hashemayim Va'aretz? This is the story of the creation of heaven and earth. In whose merit were they created? And in whose merit does the entire universe continue to exist? They stand in the merit of a different Eila. What's the other Eila? The other Eila that they stand in the merit of is the Eila Shmeis B'nei Yisrael. These are the names of the children of Yisrael, of the children of Yaakov Avinu. In other words, they stand in the merit of the Yidden. The entire universe was created and continues to exist only in the merit of the Yidden. The Eila B'zchus mi aimdim, and the Medrash continues, and in whose merit do the Yidden stand? B'zchus Eila ha'edus v'achukim v'hamishpatim. In the schus of another Eila, these are the laws and the decrees and the commandments that the Eibishter told us. In other words, the Torah and mitzvahs. So the world depends on the Yidden, and the Yidden depend on Torah. However, he explains that it's not mamish the same type of dependence. He goes like this: Shakavana de Brias Ha'elam, the dependence of the world on the Yidden goes to the core of why it was created in the first place. What was the intention? Why did the Eibishter create the world in the first place? He b'shvil Yisrael. The world wouldn't have been created if Yidden didn't exist. The entire concept of a world existing is completely dependent on the Yidden. And then the Yidden, v'hashlemus, the Yisrael, when the Yidden reach their ultimate level, their completeness, how do they achieve it? Hialidei HaTeirah. So the dependence of the Yidden on the Torah is not the same like the dependence of the world on the Yidden. The dependence of the world on the Yidden is that without the Yidden, the world wouldn't exist. The dependence of the Yidden on Torah is we're saying this: how can a Yid reach his full potential? How can a Yid reach his full potential? Through fulfilling Torah and mitzvahs in B'schus the Eila Edus VaChukim HaMishpatim. And he explains this as follows: what does it mean that through Torah mitzvahs the Yidden reach their full potential? Through this, that the Yidden fulfill the 613 mitzvahs of the Torah. They reach a higher level. They achieve a higher level than what they have on their own. So in other words, you have the madrega of the Yid as he is without Torah mitzvahs, which is already a very high madrega. However, when the Yid had this madrega, in other words, the neshama had this madrega before it came down into this world, before it had the opportunity and the ability to fulfill Torah and mitzvahs, and over there it was on a very high level. However, there's an even higher level that the neshama can achieve, and that can only happen by the neshama coming down into this world, because when the neshama comes down into this world, it can fulfill Torah and mitzvahs. Like he explains in the Maimer over there, that the Torah and mitzvahs are connected to the essence of the Eibishter, or they are the essence of the Eibishter, they're the Ratzon of the Eibishter without any concealment. And on neshama, when it's Lamaila, what does it have? It has Ava V'yira. It experiences and it serves the Eibishter through loving the Eibishter and fearing the Eibishter. However, this does not contain the essence of the Eibishter. Dafke Torah and mitzvahs, such as Ritzeinu b'chachmas shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu, dafke that contains the essence of the Eibishter. And therefore, the neshama comes down here into this world. This is why the neshama comes down into this world and it clothes itself into a physical body in order to fulfill Torah and mitzvahs. Because through fulfilling Torah and mitzvahs, which can only happen down here in this world, when the neshama comes into a body, the neshama ascends and reaches a higher level than it had before it came down into this world. And this is how the Rebbe Marash explains the connection between keeping Torah and mitzvahs and preserving the neshama. This is the connection between the two, because preserving the need of the neshama through the study of Torah, or more particularly through fulfilling the mitzvahs that the Torah tells us to fulfill. So through this, the neshama reaches a higher level than it had before it came down here into this world. And that's the beard of the Rebbe Maharash. And according to what the Rebbe Maharash and his Maimer connects, the inin im shamatas ne'ani mishamaris ne'cha hu shal dekim atem mitzvahs salsa neshama l'mayli yesmuk me'sheisa kedem yidasa. The Rebbe Maharash says that what's the idea of it means that the neshama goes higher than what it was before it came down to this world. That he connects this concept with the concept of Baalais Chesanedis, because also the Indian of Baalais Chesanedis represents the neshama reaching higher than it was before it came down here into this world. In other words, like this. We learned in last year and did a quick summary in the beginning of this year. One idea in the connection between the Torah and the neshama, and in the process of the neshama observing Torah and mitzvahs. What's the first connection? That when the neshama comes down here into this world, its nature of wanting to become part of the spiritual realms and the spiritual worlds becomes darkened and becomes concealed. And it loses that urge, the ratzah, the urgency to run up and to become included in above. It loses it. Through performing Torah and mitzvahs, the Torah shines a light on the neshama, and now the neshama is reawakened. It regains its natural desire to run back up to the spiritual worlds. That's the first explanation. The second explanation of the connection between Torah and mitzvahs and the neshama is what we learned today from the Rebbe Maharash, that The neshama in the Elam Etzelyena, before it comes down here into this world, experiences the Eibishter, experiences Gatlichkeit, and it has a tremendous love and fear of the Eibishter. However, it can't connect to the essence of the Eibishter. Through its love and fear of the Eibishter, it can connect to levels in godliness, but to the essence of the Eibishter, it can't connect. And that's why the neshama comes down here into this world, because in this world you have Torah and mitzvahs. You don't have Torah and mitzvahs in the spiritual worlds. We're just coming from Matan Torah. We have the famous medrash with the malachim sets naheitcha al shemayim. Why are you giving the Torah to lowly human beings? They're so full of problems and issues, and yeah, there's no need to focus on the issues. It's naheitcha al shemayim. What are you giving the Torah?
What is the source of the neshama is? Talking about chel yom mamish. Is that?
Oh, we'll get there. We'll get there. So Moshe Rabbeinu said that you can't have Torah and mitzvahs l'mayla. What does it say in Torah and mitzvahs? It says lo sirtzach. Don't kill. Is it possible to kill in the spiritual world? It's not possible to kill. It says kabed sabicha v'tzimacha. Do you have a father and a mother? You don't have a father and a mother. In other words, Torah and mitzvahs can only be in this physical world. So this is the second idea, that through the neshama coming down into this world, now it has something it didn't have in Atzilus or in Biyah. What didn't it have? It didn't have Torah and mitzvahs. And now it can connect to the essence of the Eibishter. In other words, the neshama can reach higher in this world than it was able to reach when it was in the spiritual worlds. See, you see the difference between the two explanations. In the first explanation, what are we saying? That the natural state of the neshama is protected. That the neshama has within it the nature of wanting to go up, and it's hidden in this world, and we unhide it, we reveal it. But the neshama isn't reaching higher than it was before. That's in the first explanation. In the second explanation of the Rebbe Marash, the neshama is actually reaching higher than it was before. Before that, it could only connect to levels in godliness, to levels in the Eibishter. Now down here through Torah and mitzvahs, it can connect to the essence of the Eibishter. So the neshama is reaching higher. So the Rebbe just says over here that since the Rebbe Marash connects these two concepts, he connects Ba'alei Ches HaNeris with Imata Meshameres Neri, we understand from this that actually also the person Ba'alei Ches HaNeris is that the neshama does also somehow reach a higher level than it had before. Also in that explanation, the neshama reaches a higher level than it had in its own natural state. You follow? You're trying to another. We'll say it again. In the first pierce, what's the first pierce by Aleis Ches HaNeris? That what's this process of the neshama performing Torah and mitzvahs? Why is it necessary? Because the neshama has in it a nature of wanting to be included in the holy spiritual worlds above. When the neshama comes down here into this world, that nature is covered over and hidden. So it needs the Torah to reveal this nature. So what are we doing in the bottom line? We're giving back to the neshama something that it always had. Through learning Torah, we give the neshama back its nature of becoming one with the upper spiritual worlds. We're giving the neshama back what it had. In the explanation of Imata Meshameres Neri and Meshameres Necha, what did we explain? That the neshama in the spiritual worlds could have love and fear of the Eibishter, but it can't connect to the essence of the Eibishter. When it comes down into this world, now the neshama has something new, something that it never had before. It can reach higher than where it was before, because now it can connect to the essence of the Eibishter by performing Torah and mitzvahs. So it can reach higher. What the Rebbe is saying over here, that also in the first explanation, that seemingly we're only restoring to the neshama its nature of wanting to ascend, its ratzah, it's wanting to go up to the Eibishter, it actually also has in it a component where we're lifting up the neshama to a higher place than it ever was before. And we'll explain it later. But they were saying that it has in it that component also. Okay, now we're going to learn a third pirush, a third way of understanding the connection and the story of a neshama performing Torah and mitzvahs. A third way. And it's going to take us the whole Daled, so one step at a time. We'll be in to explain these ideas in greater detail. That the Rebbe Marash's question, where he tries to understand Why is preserving the candle of the neshama dependent on keeping Torah and mitzvahs? What's bothering the Marash? He explains like this: The Medrash doesn't only say that the person doesn't chas v'shalom do averis, but rather the Medrash says Elishu mekayim mitzvahs hatera. Shamarta Snedi means not only that he doesn't extinguish the candle, it means that he's preserving the candle. In other words, he's doing mitzvahs. And that's what Rebbe Marash doesn't understand. This is the depth of the question of Rebbe Maharash. Why does the neshama need the performance of mitzvahs? And he explains as follows. Had the Medrash only said that in order to preserve the neshama, you better watch out, don't do any averis, so then the Rebbe Marash wouldn't have a question. He could readily understand this. When somebody chas v'shalom doesn't aveda, the neshama is blemished. So the Rebbe Marash can understand that he doesn't have a question on the Medrash. His question on the Medrash isn't why you have to watch out from doing avedas. That we can say an aveda blemishes the neshama, so don't do it if you want to protect your neshama. But the Medrash says more than that. What Rebbe Marash is trying to understand in the Maimon is, why does the neshama need the mitzvahs? Why does the neshama need to actually perform the mitzvahs in order to have its light, its candle, be preserved? And Rebbe adds in this diuk, that the Rebbe Marash's question is primarily benegeya to neshamas of Atzilus. Because the benegea neshamas to biyah, concerning the neshamas of biyah, shem reva neshamas, which they're the majority of the neshamas, is shleima dezesh shmiras haned on nesham tlui b'nei detayna hu dekivan she'etzlam haguf v'nefesh avamis ma'il v'master on neshama lachein shmiras haned neshmas mal dekimat eremitzas kanal sif base. Had we been talking about the neshamas of biyah, so the Rebbe Marash would have given the explanation that the Rebbe gives in this Maimer, that the Rebbe gave and we learned in the first year, that what? The same explanation that we give in Baha'alois Ches HaNeris, that neshamas of Biyah, when they come down into this world, and really this is an explanation given already by Rabbein before the Rebbe Marash. This is an explanation that the Rebbe Marash could have easily used for neshamas of Biyah. That what? That since when neshamas of Biyah come into this world, the Nefesh Abamis and the Guf cover over its nature of Ratzah, its nature of wanting to ascend, and its urgent feel that it needs to be part of the holiness that's in the upper worlds. It's covered over, so we understand why neshamas of Biyah need Torah to restore this nature. However, the Rebbe Marash's primary question is when they get to neshamas of Atzilus. Neshamas of Atzilus, even when they come down into this world, they still maintain their nature, the ratzoi of wanting to become part of the Eibishter or part of the upper worlds. They still preserve it and doesn't get covered over. And that's what is bothering the Rebbe Maharash. Why do these neshamas also need Torah? Seemingly without Torah and mitzvahs, the neshama is in a perfect state. Even while it's here in this world, the neshama is in a perfect state. It wants to become one with the holiness that's above it. It's not affected by this world. So why do these neshamas of Atzilus need Torah and mitzvahs? And without Torah and mitzvahs, it says that they're going to be extinguished. The Hadir Vashail, Bahamaim who big neshamas Atzilus is primarily asking regarding the neshamas of Atzilus. The Kivan Sha'atzlam and Neshama Hibigili. Since then, by the neshamas of Atzilus, their neshama is revealed. The nature of the neshama is revealed. Why do they need the neir of Torah?
Excuse me, there's a small minority on the Nishmat Atzilus.
So you're asking why is Rebbe Marash in his Maimer? So yeah, but I think what's bothering him is you're trying to understand. So why is Rebbe Marash talking about that small minority of neshamas of Atzilus?
No. I'm just trying to.
It's a very, very small minority. It says, I'm not sure if it brings it in the heart over here or if I saw it in Rebbe Marash's Maimer, but it says that even in previous generations they were extremely rare. In other words, even in the generations of the Nevi'im, Tanoim, Amirim, they were extremely rare. And as the generations progress, they become even more rare.
Okay.
So, yes, absolutely, an extreme minority. Yeah. The vast majority of Yidden, virtually every Yid that you'll meet is a neshama of Biyah, whose body and Nefesh Abamis covers over on the nature of the neshama that wants to just become, just wants to connect to the holiness that's above it, and it needs Torah in order to awaken its desire to want to connect to the holiness that's above it.
Right.
Okay, now it's going to be a little bit of a technical question, so try to help up. Well, Pisa Tzarech Lavin Mashakasav B'Hamaimer. According, if this is the Rebbe Marash's question, now the Rebbe is going to have some difficulty understanding the Rebbe Marash's answer. Now the Rebbe already doesn't understand the Rebbe Marash's answer. Pisa, according to this Tzarech Lavin Mashakasav B'Hamaimer, the Zeh Shemiras Hanel Dan Hashamei Al Dei Shemiras Hanel De Torah. Who ki Elish Mois Bnei Yisrael Im Dim B'Zchus Eleides V'Chukim HaMishpatim. The Rebbe Marash's answer of the question, what's the Rebbe Marash's explanation of the connection between the candle of Torah and the candle of the neshama was the second medrash, was the medrash of Eila Tolis Hashmayim Ba'aretz. L'chura, how does this explain answer the question? This that the Yidden stand and exist in the merit of Torah and mitzvahs. What does that mean? What does this medrash mean? The Rebbe Marash explained that this means that through performing Torah and mitzvahs, they reach a higher level than they were before. But the level of the neshama itself, the neshama on its own, seemingly is not dependent on Torah. Again, what's the explanation of the medrash that the Yid stands in the merit of Torah and mitzvahs? How did the Rebbe Marash explain this medrash? That how does the neshama reach higher than its own state? How does the neshama reach higher than its own natural situation and condition? By performing Torah and mitzvahs. So what's this medrash talking about in the explanation of the Rebbe Marash? It's talking about not the state of the neshama itself, not the natural condition of the neshama itself, but how can the neshama reach higher? Okay, that's that medrash. Upirishim shamarta esneiri, but l'chora the first medrash that was bothering the Rebbe Marash, which is if you guard my candle, I will guard your candle. L'chora we're talking about the neshama itself. That the neshama itself requires the candle of Torah in order to guard it, in order to keep it. Yeah.
So basically, yeah.
The Rebbe Marash has two midrashim. He explains the deeper meaning behind the two midrashim, and he answers one with the other. But the Rebbe has a difficulty putting them together. What were the two midrashim? How does the Rebbe Marash explain that? That the neshama itself needs to be guarded and needs to be watched so that it's preserved. The neshama itself. There's a second medrash that says that by performing Torah and mitzvahs, by performing Torah and mitzvahs, the neshama reaches higher than its own natural state. And with this, the Rebbe Marash explains why the neshama needs to be preserved by the candle of Torah. But the Rebbe asks, l'chora, there's a disconnect over here. Saying that the neshama needs to be preserved means to say that the neshama itself, in its own natural state, needs to be preserved. And you're telling me that how is it preserved? By picking it up higher through Torah and mitzvahs. Now you're not talking about preserving your natural state. You're talking about reaching a higher level than you were before. So what's the connection? It's two different concepts. It's two different ideas. How are you bringing one to answer the other? Make sense? So in order to explain this, the Rebbe brings a third idea, a third concept in the connection between a Yid and Torah. We can explain this according to the Maimer of the Zayah. Yeah, the famous Yanukah that he brings in that the Alter brings in Tanya and Perek Lamed Hey, the K'moisha Eir Haneir Einei Meir V'Nechas V'Psila B'li Shemen. Picture a candle. You have a candle, and you have like a candle in the Hanukkah menorah. Yeah, you have a candle, and you have the light that's burning on the wick, and then you have the oil that's in the cup. Yeah, and without oil in the cup, the candle can't burn. Yeah. Just like the candle cannot burn without oil, so too the Shechina cannot rest on a person's body, which the person's body is compared to a wick. El alidei ma'asim tovim shenimshlu l'shemen. The only way that it can rest on the person is through good deeds. In other words, through Torah, which is compared to oil. So in the Nimshal, you have the Shechina, which is represented by the candle, I believe, and that is Shoira, that is connected to the psila, to the wick, to the person, and it can't connect to the person without oil, which is Tainan mitzvahs. Yeah? Yeah. Umevar, the time that Alter Rebbe explains in Tanya that Tamal Zeh Shashras Hashchina Al Gufa Adam Hidafka El Dekim Mitzvahs Ma'asim Tovim. V'loy Daile B'nishmas Sheich Chelik Kamim Mali is Hikesham L'Psila. Alter Rebbe asks in Tanya L'Chure, why does a person need Torah mitzvahs to be the oil for his wick? The wick is the body. L'Chure, the body has a neshama that's in it. The neshama itself is a chelik alikami mal, is a part of the Eibishter, like you mentioned earlier. So l'chor, that neshama could serve as the oil that connects the person's body, so that the body should be able to receive the shechina, that the shechina should be able to rest on the person's body. Why can't the neshama do that job?
More than that, something is a chelik, so it's a connection.
Yeah. So he says like this. Alter Rebbe explains in Tanya, "Kenishmas ha'adam," because the neshama of the person, even when the person is a complete and absolute tzaddik. In other words, there's no ra in him whatsoever. And he loves the Eibishter and he fears the Eibishter. And he serves the Eibishter with a higher level of love, the and by delighting in the Eibishter. Nevertheless, the neshama is not completely nullified before the Eibishter. The neshama is a separate entity. Like we see from this, that we say it's Yirei Havaya V'Oyav. There is something that's fearing the Eibishter. There is something that's loving the Eibishter. If it was completely bottle, if it was nothing, then you wouldn't be able to say that it loves and it fears. By saying that the neshama loves the Eibishter and the neshama fears the Eibishter, you're saying there's something here that loves. There's something here that fears. The mitzvahs, however, the mitzvahs shem pnimius ritzenius barach, the mitzvahs which they are the pnimius of the Eibishter's ratzon. In other words, unlike the world, which is the chitzenius of the Eibishter's ratzon, the mitzvahs are the Eibishter's ratzon itself. And these are already not something separate from the Eibishter. Mitzvahs are not separate from the Eibishter, and therefore, the chayis that's in the mitzvahs isn't something separate at all, not in any way whatsoever, and is completely one and contained within the will of the Eibishter. And therefore, and therefore, the Shechina resting on a person's body can be brought about dafke by performing mitzvahs. What does it mean that the Eibishter should rest somewhere? That the Eibishter should rest somewhere means that place becomes completely absorbed and completely included and contained within the Eibishter's Shechina, by being completely bottled to the Eibishter. Which only then can Hashem, who's called Hashem Echad, Hashem is all about oneness, where there's separation, where there's otherness, where there are things that have an agenda for themselves, and they declare their own identity and their own existence. The Eibishter doesn't rest there, because they're contrary to what the Eibishter is. The Eibishter is the oneness that's in everything, is the truth that's in everything. There is nothing but the Eibishter. And something that denies that, something that doesn't want to join that program, even in the most subtle, refined way, even as a completely holy being, even as a neshama. But the neshama, not that it wants to, but still it's in existence. That's the way the Eibishter formed it. The Eibishter took a chelik alekami ma'al mamash. He took a part of himself and turned it into a nitzas nivra. It's a nitzas ben and the nitzas nivra. The Eibishter took a part of himself and turned it into a creation. So it's a creation, it's its own thing, it loves the Eibishter, it fears the Eibishter, but it's a thing. So it can't become completely one with the Eibishter. Torah and mitzvahs aren't a thing. Torah and mitzvahs is the Eibishter's will. The Eibishter said, do this, don't do this. It's not a thing. It's what the Eibishter wants. He said, do this, don't do this. Since Torah and mitzvahs are not a thing, it's only what the Eibishter wants. In other words, You don't have Torah wants you to do this. We use that expression sometimes that Torah wants you to do. What do you mean Torah wants you? Torah isn't kivyochel a conscious entity. Torah is the Ratzon of the Eibster. What we're saying is that the Ratzon of the Eibster wants you to do this. There is nothing on its own in Torah. It is just the Ratzon of the Eibster. And that, since it's completely bottled, it has zero existence of its own, so that the Eibster could be shayed on it. Over there, the Eibster could rest. Havaya echad, the Eibster whose oneness, and can only rest in a place that lets in his oneness, could rest in Torah and mitzvahs. And therefore, when you have a person and he wants the Eibster to rest on his body, he needs to bring some bittul to his body. Because his body itself, of course, won't do the job. He needs to find something that's completely bottled to the Eibster so that the Eibster can rest on him. Just like the wick needs oil so that the fire can burn. So he can't use his neshama for this because his neshama isn't completely bottled b'mitzias to the Eibster. Therefore, he has to perform Torah and mitzvahs because Torah and mitzvahs are completely bottled to the Eibster. According to this, by this we can now understand why the nail of the neshama, the candle of the neshama, has to be preserved through the candle of Torah. Because what do we mean when we say the candle of the neshama? The nail of the neshama is the bittul of the neshama. What does the Alter Rebbe explain in Tanya Perek Yotes? Why is the neshama called a nail? Why is the neshama called a candle? A neshama is called a candle because just like the candle is constantly flickering and it wants to go up and not be a fire onto its own, but instead it just wants to go back up to its source in the Yeseda Eish Shalamatim in Galgal Hayareach. It wants to go up to its source, which is above the atmosphere, let's just say, and therefore it's always flickering in an effort to go back up. It doesn't want to be in a mitzias. So when you say the nail of the neshama, when you say the candle of the neshama, what do you mean? You mean the bittul of the neshama. And the bittul of the neshama needs a shmirah. It needs something to help it along. Because the neshama on its own cannot reach the ultimate level of bittul. The neshama on its own, since it's a creation, since it's a bria, it's a chelik l'kamim al mam, it's true. But as the Eibster brought it down and created a neshama out of it, so it's lacking kivyochel. On its own, it's lacking in its bittul. It can't reach the highest level of bittul on its own. It needs the bittul of Torah. And the bittul of Torah, like we learn later in the Maimer, lifts the neshama up and grants the neshama the same level of bittul that the Torah has. But on its own, the candle of the neshama needs help. The bittul of the neshama needs the help of the bittul of Torah. Ushleim usabittul da neshama. The full potential of the bittul of the neshama, which is a bittul b'mitzias legamri, to be completely nothing, is by fulfilling the mitzvahs. Because without fulfilling the mitzvahs, the neshama will remain in existence. By fulfilling the mitzvahs, and this aspect of the fulfillment of mitzvahs, the neshama loses its existence. That what is a neshama now? It is something that does mitzvahs. Its whole something is something that it does mitzvahs. So it becomes completely bottled. We'll see later. And this is why in the Medrash he calls the Ner of the Neshama Ner Chad Ha'adam, that the Neshama is the person's Ner, and the Ner of Torah Mitzvahs is the Eibishter's candle. What are we talking about over here? We're talking about the bittul of the Neshama, the Ner Chash, Mitzad Atzma, Eine bittul betachlis, and therefore it's Ner Chad Ha'adam. The Ner, the bittul, isn't a complete bittul, and therefore it's associated with the existence, with the yeshus, or the mitzias at least, of the person, with identity and the entity of the person. The Haner, the mitzvahs, however, the bittul of mitzvahs, Shu Pnimis, Ritzani Yisbarach, Hu Neiri da HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That's already a complete bittul b'mitzias, and therefore it's called the Ner of the Eibishter, because it has nothing of its own, it's just the Eibishter. And through this, that a person performs mitzvahs, nimshach bitul gam. It's a printing mistake. Nimshach bitul zeh, nimshach gam bitul zeh b'haneshama. Also, this bitul is drawn down into the neshama. Ani mishamer esnech, that the Eibishter guards your candle. So over here we have a third way of understanding the name of the neshama and the name of Torah. In other words, the connection between Torah and the Yid. How many different things do we see over here in this Maimer on there that a person is compared to a candle? Yeah, we have the Yanuka compares the person to a candle. We have the pasuk all the way in the beginning of the Maimer Nei Havaya Nishmas Adam. It's a pasuk where it's in Kehelis, in Mishli. Then we have the Medish, Imata Meshamer Esneri Ani Meshamer Esnercha. Then we have the explanation of the Alter Rebbe and Perik Yotes and Tanya, that just like a candle wants to go up, so too the neshama wants to go up. So next time you see a candle, perhaps you think about a neshama. Of Al Kolpanim. Getting back to the main point over here, we have the third way of understanding what's the story of a neshama coming down into this world and doing mitzvahs. What's it all about? Why did I have to come down here? Why do I have to be here? And what is it about Torah mitzvahs that I have to perform Torah mitzvahs? You tell me, why do I have to be here? So you tell me, because I have to do Torah mitzvahs. So tell me, what is Torah mitzvahs and what does it have to do to me being here? There's many explanations. But because Torah is Torah's emes, so each part of the question has to be answered from every dimension, from every angle. So you could ask the question, why does the neshama have to come down into this world where it's so painful for the neshama? So that's explained in other Mamarim. We learned one of them. We learned the Maimer Baruch Hagem L'Chiyavim Tevis, that it's dafka through the Nisyanis that the neshama reaches higher than it was able to be before. Over here explains that's through Torah mitzvahs. That's from a different dimension. Each one has its place. In other words, when you have arrangements in this world, so the arrangements they don't completely cover what's going on. When I'm trying to explain something, I don't have the exact words to explain. But let's say, for example, if I go to the store and buy something, or if I have a business to earn a living. Let's stay with the first one. If I go to the store to buy something, why did I go to the store to buy something? Because I needed food. So there's a reason why I went to the store and paid money, because I had to buy food. However, is there a reason why I had to go to this store to get my food? No. Is there a reason why I had to pay this money and this amount of money to get this food? No. Is there a reason why the owner of this store had to get my money? No. That's all circumstantial. There's only one thing that has a reason. I needed food, I went to a store. Everything else is circumstantial. It was closer, it was here, this is what there's no truth in it. It's not connected to the fact that I need food. The fact that I went to this store, the fact that that person made money off of it, the fact that it cost me so much and so much money is all circumstantial, it's incidental. It doesn't have anything to do with the fact that I need food. There's only one detail that has to do with the fact that I went to the store. I went to the store because I need food. That's the only part that has to do with my need for food. Everything else is incidental to it. The Eivishter is emes. By the Eivishter, everything is completely, every detail is part of the story. There isn't anything that's incidental. There isn't anything that's a coincidence. And in this Maimer, we see over here where we're asking the question, what's the connection between the neshama coming down here to do Torah and mitzvahs? In other places, it's explained that that the neshama comes down here to do Torah mitzvahs in order to elevate the world. The Alter Rebbe in Tanya says that the neshama atzma in tzricha tikun, it's to be mesak in the guf. Over here, we're saying that the neshama itself has an aliyah, and not only that, we're saying it in three different ways. The mind is up. And we're saying it in three different ways. Why? Because the Eibishter, in his kindness, makes sure that every dimension of reality, every angle of our existence is part of the story. There's no part of it that's nebach suffering, that's being dragged along because I need to do something, so you're going to have to now be dragged along. Everything is perfect. Every part of this world that I come in contact with, every experience in life is connected to what really needs to be happening and to the emes of the Eibishter. It's not just because the technicalities require that it should be there. And in this moment, we're focusing on, why do I have to do Torah and mitzvahs? Why does the neshama have to do Torah and mitzvahs? And in this, we have so far three explanations, which is, in other words, three angles of how it really takes over the person's entire, so much of the person's existence. The first explanation was the explanation of Baha'u'llah's Chesanedis. That's the first one. Baha'u'llah's Chesanedis says that the neshama comes down here into this world and it loses its nature of wanting to go up and become connected to the holiness in the worlds that are above it. It loses its urgency, its motion of going upwards to the Elam Yisraelim. That's the Ratzai. It loses it when it comes down here into this world. So Torah restores that. The light of Torah restores it. That's the first explanation. That's why we come down here and do Torah mitzvahs. The second explanation was our first way of understanding, which is what the Rebbe Marash says in his Maimer, that the neshama in the Elam Yisraelim can only experience Ava v'Yira, but it can't do Torah and mitzvahs. Ava v'Yira will only get it so far. It will connect to levels of the Eibishter, but not to the essence of the Eibishter. Therefore, it comes down here into this world. So now it can connect to the essence of the Eibishter by doing Torah and mitzvahs. So the connection between a Yid and his Torah and mitzvahs is that he should be able to connect to the essence of the Eibishter. Balais Chesanez was to restore its Dratzoi. Is to connect to Atzmos and Sof. And now we have the third explanation, which is that the neshama has a ner, the neshama has a bittul to the Eibishter. However, this bittul is incomplete. It's a bittul that can only go as far as a nivra can take it, as a metzias can take it. And in order,
the second and third.
the first one it's very similar.
And the third is that it can connect.
L'chora, the third one goes higher, because in the second one we're saying that the neshama is connecting to Atzmos. In other words, the dogish is on what? Is on the neshama. That the neshama can connect to Atzmos. In the third level, we stop so much talking about the neshama achieving anything. We're talking about the neshama becomes bottle. The neshama becomes bottle with the Eibishter. L'chura, it's a step higher. That's the way I understand it. L'chura, and that's what the Rebbe is being basic from the Maimon of the Rebbe Marash, and it's a step higher. That the neshama has a ner, it has a bittul, and in order for the neshama to be bottled to the Eibishter completely, it needs to have Torah and mitzvahs, because without Torah and mitzvahs, it's stuck in a mitzias, in the mitzias of the neshama. That's the third explanation of the why we are down here in this world doing Torah and mitzvahs. And of course, like it's explained in many other places, it's not pshat that we only need the higher level, we don't need the lower levels, because like we said before, the Eibishter in his kindness made sure that every detail of our life is part of serving him. And there's a maila in the lower levels, Dafka, like it's explained in many other places. There's a maila in a Metzias serving the Eibishter that you don't have in a bittul serving the Eibishter. You have to understand what kind of Metzias it is. That's a topic for other Mamorim. Okay, shkech.
I think that leads to the purpose of